Welcome to Where the Veil Grows Thin. I'm Sean Jung, your host, and I'm very honored today to have Isa Catto as my special guest. I have known of the Catto family for many years, and almost a year ago, a mutual friend of ours started telling me that I needed to meet Isa, and it just never happened. And then Isa and her husband Daniel and their daughter Fiona suffered a tragic loss when Fiona's sister Bailey died this past June. Bailey's death, as anyone can imagine, has turned their world inside out. And it's now been 10 months since Bailey died. I'm sure that the landscape of Isa's life changed forever with that phone call because she writes prolifically and honestly on her Substack page, Swimming at Altitude, about the loss of their daughter, the incomprehensible reality that she was alive 1 minute and then she was gone. In your online bio, Isa, you describe yourself as a mom to humans, a high alpine dweller, an artist, a designer, an amateur flower stalker, and steward of the Mojo Gardens. But you do not mention being a member of the club you joined the day Bailey died. You do write with raw emotion and eloquence about your path forward since that day. For months, I have wanted to ask you if you would come join me to talk about your grief, but it is such a foreign country when we find ourselves thrown into that depth of grief. And initially, I think people can't speak about it because they don't yet know the language. It's a private time in a woman's life when this kind of tragedy happens. And I am unspeakably honored and grateful that you agreed to be with me today. So welcome and thank you.
It is my honor. And you just reminded me that I need to update my bio. When you're in deep mourning, the cognitive mind goes bye-bye. And it's definitely hard to keep track of all those things, the pragmatic side of life. So I will do that.
I will tell people that we think it's our hearts that are shattered when we lose a beloved, but it's really our brain is the organ that is most impacted, and how dangerous it can be for us because of the inability to have cognitive thought, to remember. I tell people, put little Post-its around the house that say, drink a glass of water, flush, wipe, remember to eat something, go outside, breathe air. I mean, we don't function. Do you feel like telling us a little bit about Bailey?
Yeah. So Bailey was truly unforgettable. I mean, she was from a young age. We had to get her tested. She's brilliant. Like, her processing couldn't keep up with the brain, so it was estimated around 172 or something. And the irony is, I never told Bailey what her IQ was, because I don't really believe in that. But now I really realize it doesn't matter how brilliant you are if you're not making good choices, and if you're struggling with your mental health, which she did. So she was this really dynamic. She was a professional magician. She could do anything, pick up anything and do it well. She's incredible with languages. She had perfect auditory memory. So, and she was just whip smart, obviously, and really funny. And she was trans. She came out as trans a couple of, the spring freshman year in high school. And that obviously is a challenge in this day and time when the queer community is really being put through its paces and marginalized. And then she was a great friend. And what else can I She was a theater tech. She was really good at managing a theater production. So she did them all over this valley. And so a lot of people knew her. And she was a total workaholic. And I think that, and we're just a very close family. And this came as a big shock to the community. And the high school just put a plaque up in her honor in the theater. And a whole bunch of students came, and I learned more stories about Bailey, because she was a teenager when she died. And so you don't, you wait as a teenager for them to really communicate with you again. They're doing the natural developmental separation. So it was really great to hear stories from that we didn't know. So the high school has been unbelievably kind to Aspen High School.
So she died right hours after landing in New York City, where she had gotten this great job, like a dream come true job for her, working on Broadway. And she was going to take this time and she had just graduated from high school.
Days before she graduated from high school, June 1st, 2024. She died June 4th, 2024.
Far away from you, far away from home. And I know that since that time, you and Daniel, I assume, I don't know Daniel well at all, but you talk about him. You write about him, but you guys have sort of made it a new focus in your lives to fight what took her life, what happened to her. And I want you to have an opportunity to talk about that if you want to. And I do want to be able to, and I think Ben will do this, post on the screen how people can find out what you've been up to since that time in terms of your new focus in your lives to try to not have this happen to other families.
No, we do not want agony for anyone else. And that's one of the reasons why we spoke at the high school. And that's one of the reasons why we went. Daniel and I were literally on the plane in New York, just absolutely shredded. And we turned to each other at the same time and said, oh my God, what if she scored here? What if there are other kids at risk? And so we instantly called the principal and sounded the alarm. That was not the case, we found out later, but that is why we went so public. And what we've discovered in this space, when you've lost a child, on her medical report says extreme fentanyl poisoning. And for those who don't know, because this was not my world, it is now, that fentanyl is pumped from China to the cartels, and then they use fentanyl, which is so cheap, to cut other drugs. And it takes 10 grains, salt-shaped grains of fentanyl to kill you. So it's very easy to die, and fentanyl strips don't always capture all of the. People are like, well, they're fentanyl strips, but actually they don't capture. You have to. They're tests, yeah. You have to do it in a very systematic way, and so. In terms of advocacy, I'm writing, and Daniel is very involved with this group called Blue Rising, which at this moment, there's a bill in front of Jared Polis to get social media companies to play ball in fentanyl deaths and also other kinds of horrific things like trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, because all of that, there's lots of commerce going on that especially on Snapchat, you just don't see it. We were lucky because we got, Bailey didn't cover, we were able to, and I can't talk about the case in New York, but we're getting close, the NYPD is getting closer to a capture. And because there was a text. So that really helped the investigation, but most parents aren't that lucky. most parents, there are all these encrypted, social media ways to communicate. And so this bill will, if it is passed, will help communities find justice for their kids and get the drug dealers off. I mean, the internet, at least temporarily. But that's what's been really horrific, is learning about how people are stalled. They have no recourse. And Jared Polis, not to get into Colorado politics too much, is worried about First Amendment rights. And, hey, we're big First Amendment people, but we don't think there should be platforms where drug dealers and sex traffickers can just hang out happily without consequence. And there's got to be a way that you can balance protection for freedoms and protection for families.
Yeah. So what an amazing thing for you guys to channel so much of the energy of your grief into something that can make a difference in someone else's life, to keep another family, even one, from having to experience.
Just to think twice. And, one of Bailey's friends texted me and said, the fentanyl crisis seems to be on the wane. And I said, there's going to be something else, my dear. We have to keep eyes out for everyone and take responsibility, because this is a whole new ball game. And so, maybe fentanyl will not be pumped in from China as before. I have no way of knowing, but there'll be something else. And it's just a very scary place for young people and vulnerable people. And no one is dispensable. And it's been really interesting in this space. And I've talked to a lot of other survivors, like, when people exit via drugs, the stigma is so strong. And I want to make it my mission to say, hey, this child was so spectacular and could have done something for this planet, but she didn't get a chance.
She is doing something for the planet, Isa. Even in her death, she's doing something for the planet. What you're saying is she could have done so many more things. This is a rotten legacy to have, but she is doing something. She didn't die in vain. I mean, it was tragic and horrible, and it shouldn't have happened. And you and Daniel and her sister are making something positive out of it. You're going to do whatever you can to make something.
You're so lovely, and that is our goal. And but and it's you never can do as much as you want to do, because back to your initial point with grief, my God, for someone who was once super organized and a great multitasker, I've turned into this, maybe two things a day, kind of person. And there is, as I'm sure you've read this book called The Science of Grief. Your brain literally does change, and the volume of the brain remains, but the spaces between the segments of the brain actually expand, and your neurotransmitters go off the rail, and your brain just doesn't work. And that's why it's really important to try to do sort of basic cognitive stuff. Writing has really helped me, because my memory went out the window. I'm sort of wandering from room to room, and it's still not great. And I still drive people crazy. Like, what? You said, oh, okay. And I write everything down, but like everything, you've got to work to bring the memory back. So,
and it's only been a minute. In the trajectory of lives, it's only been a minute. 10 months is, when you posted this a month ago, and I texted you, I think, and said 9 months. what else happens in 9 months? I mean, that, so, that the acknowledgement for you as a mother, I know Daniel and Fiona suffer greatly in this. So does everybody who ever met her or knew her or even knows of her now. But for you, you have a relationship with Bailey that is 9 months longer than anyone else. And so you have a thing there that, as a mom, that is unique to being the mother of someone who dies. You have written that in a family unit, when someone dies, each member of the family suffers a different loss, which is something I talk about in families all the time. Everybody lost someone different when she died. You recognize in one of your pieces that the role that Fiona stepped into for you and Daniel immediately following Bailey's death, coming home, being there. I mean, thank God you had her and still do. Recently, you've been sharing Fiona's adventures in the Peruvian jungles because she has now gone to do something that she has always had a passion for, to be a field biologist. And you've been posting incredible photographs. But I wanted to touch on one piece of writing that you did when you and Daniel were making that 2-hour drive home from the airport recently, after seeing her off, and remembering that the last time you had put one of your daughters on a plane was when you saw Bailey off to New York in June. And you said that the memory of that filled the car with a crushing anxiety. I would imagine that there's no way to brace for moments like that in your lives, that sometimes it must feel like you're just being hit blindsided by a tidal wave. How difficult has it been for you to learn to, because what you said in that writing that was so poignant, everything you write, that since I have started following you, which has been since Bailey died, resonates with me as a grief counselor. Everything you say is so powerful. I wanted to ask you how difficult it's been for you to learn to just sit for a moment when those things happen, because that's what you said. I just had to sit with that in order to even be able to take a breath.
That's an excellent observation / question. I mean, we had to pull over, and I forget the name of that state park on the way to Grand Junction. You probably know it well, but and it was freezing cold, and I just had to walk our dog. But I was not good, even though I've had a lot of loss in my life. Was not good at just, they always say, the advice, and you obviously use this advice as a counselor as well, like just let it push through you, but we are not programmed that way. We don't want to feel the pain.
We want to push against it.
So this has been a quite the growth, if you want to call it that, exercise for me, and I'm getting better at it, and it's important. I mean, look, we're programmed, and a lot of it is cultural too. I mean, I think some cultures handle grief really well, and others do not. I am standard issue WASP. We are like, let's get on with life, chin up, all of that stuff, and it really does not do you any favors. And so, it's one of the things I think I did write about is it's fascinating to watch yourself and your family members change in real time. And I am so, it feels like all of my cells have just flipped. I mean, emotionally, how I face the world, I'm sure you have a more professional expression for it, but that's one of the ways I have changed, is to not run away and not be busy, because that is what I've done, and there is a compulsion and maybe, it's our generation or whatever, that you just stay really busy and somehow you'll be relevant, instead of it's okay to sit and stare at the dog bowl or whatever, and that reprogramming has been mind blowing, because I've also seen what I've missed by just scurrying around all the time.
Yeah, you're right. We do tend to want to run away from it and stay as busy as we can, thinking if we just let enough time pass, because we've been told that time heals all wounds. If we just let enough time go by, it's going to get better. And it doesn't. Grief doesn't. Grief waits. It lies in wait. It wants to be honored. It wants to be processed. It wants to be befriended. And that takes sitting still and looking at the dog bowl. It takes, being in stillness. And we don't want to be in stillness when our hearts have been ripped out and trampled on. So I know that you have done a lot of work around understanding all of this since the moment of her death, even though you've experienced great losses in your life. Your mother died, your father died, your sister died, and now one of your daughters has died. And every person we lose has a unique impact on our lives because of the relationship we had with them. But when we lose a child, it is, different than any other loss we have. It's kind of like when we lose a dog, nothing loves us unconditionally like a pet does, like a dog does. And when we lose dogs, that sense of we're not supposed to feel that depth of grief when we lose a companion animal. And it's sad that people think that they're not supposed to feel that depth of grief for a companion animal because they love us so unconditionally. But that relationship you have with Bailey is like that. It's just unique. So you continue to do the work, and I know you've done the work. And one other question. In the weeks immediately following Bailey's death, you wrote about the challenges facing your family, and that one of the first being how to ever again celebrate life with such shattered hearts. And how after the recognized acceptable period of mourning, which is such bull crap, but there is this, people think, oh well, it's been a month, it's been a minute, it's been a year, it hasn't yet, but it's been 5 minutes, like I said a minute ago. What it has felt like trying to return to the real world, and I know you take small bites, you ease into it, but can you talk a little bit about what that is like currently in your life, and maybe something that you and Daniel do to stay grounded in it's okay for us to be okay some moments, but it's also okay for us to not be okay yet. We're never going to be okay, but you are. You know what? I mean, you're.
No, I know exactly. I was I'm sorry to interrupt, because I know exactly. I'm like, oh my God, this is so spot on. So I have a good friend, Rainey. She's like, do you just go crazy when people they ask you how you are, and you automatically supposed to say fine. And I said, you know what, my okay is the new fine. And we were laughing hysterically because you're right. That's the gear that you aim for now. And it doesn't mean that you can't laugh or experience joy. But the best way to describe it, I was writing a letter, that Bailey's absence will always be part of my presence. And so you have these two selves that you present. Sorry. You have these two selves, and one is the functioning one. Because, I'm still very much a mom and a wife, and I have a lot of relationships, and I'm very involved with our community. So that self is functioning, and it throws people because they think, oh, she's okay. And then you have And I don't like to, I knew Jungian therapists call it the shadow self and all that. It's not a shadow. It's just this self that very few see, except my dog, and my husband, and my daughter, and a few friends. But so you have to sort of accommodate both of them. And do you remember Dr. Doolittle, that creature, the push me, pull you? It's a lot like that. You're headed forward and then you get yanked back. And so it's an odd space. And I know from other friends who've lost kids that you adapt and you learn how to accommodate those. But I think what people don't talk about and don't know is that this never goes away. And I don't know if you've read Carrie Egan's book, On Living. She's a hospice, I'm sorry, what?
I have not. I'm just writing it down.
Oh, well, we used to host a Writers in Residence program on our little farm, and we met and we became very close. And she is a hospice chaplain, so she or was, now she writes, and so she writes about grief and the regrets of the dying, and she's also just really funny. And so she obviously was in touch, and she said, you don't get over this. You don't, people like to put time frames and she said, this is life. This is life. She said, for example, there's so much focus on widows and widowers, which is appropriate, but she said, they can go on to find another partner. And so even though that's not the same, but she said, we've got to sort of get through or resist this. Oh, it'll take a year, or as you said. So that's been, I don't know if I have advice for anyone, but just to sit side by side with with these two selves. And it makes me sound like I have that, what is the two-selfed Janice from the
Schizophrenia.
But yeah, well, then that too. But it's very real, because the thing is, you do have to function, and the world is very impatient for you. Would just be floored if I told you how many requests and et cetera, it's just amazing. And I frankly don't even respond to them anymore, because I just don't have the energy, and email's hard for me. So, but anyway, I think I think I really strayed from your original question, Sean.
I think everything you're saying is really important for people to hear. And I think people who listen to this, who either know someone or are someone who has suffered the loss of a child, that if you catch anybody when they haven't figured any of that out yet, it can be their lifeline. It can be the knot at the end of their rope to hear another mom talk about what she's learned in the one step at a time for the rest of your life. This is now a part of your story. It's part of who you are. And until you can sit side by side with that other self and eventually open your arms and invite that other self onto your lap, put your arms around it, that is befriending the grief. That is honoring the loss and knowing that it will always be part of who you are. So let's build a beautiful altar inside of ourselves to keep those memories and to hold that other self, so that we're not push-pull, so that we assimilate all of who we are into one beautiful human that we present to the world. It's sort of like the goal in a way. and it is for the rest of your life. It's forever. There is no time frame on loss. There just isn't.
It's so beautifully put. That is beautifully put. That is the goal, is to try to
Make friends.
unite these two selves. And it may not be, totally tidy, but it's like the zygote when it splits. It has twins, like trying to merge them back, and that may not happen entirely, but that is exactly the goal. And that's what my grief counselor has said. All right, that's going to be our work going forward, because I need a lot of counseling. And so, but it is, the world likes tidiness, and this is so untidy, this process. And so it's been fascinating, because I think I definitely was like, okay, we show up, we go out, we hide our stuff, and that's changed.
So that's what we do. We know to present to the world the way they expect to see us. If we Paula D'Arcy writes about, if we could present to the world truly the way we felt when we're grieving, we would be in a full body cast. We're shattered. We don't. We put on our makeup or we put on our face and we go out into the world, and people will say, so how are you? And we learn who to answer honestly with. We learn to say, I'm okay. My okay is the new I'm fine. Or we can look at ourselves and say, well, today I remembered to put my pants on before I left the house, so I guess I'm doing better. I mean, that tells somebody you have a story, for one thing. And it also tells somebody that do you have time for a cup of coffee? Because then I can really tell you how I'm doing. But there aren't very many people that we're going to do that with. And so, good job having a good counselor, having a husband and a daughter and some friends that you can share really and truly what it's like to be Isa today. And I am so grateful to you for coming. I don't want to keep you longer. I would like to hope that another day you might come back again in a few months and talk about what is it like now, a few months later. This is an important thing for people to hear, and not very many people want to talk about it. It's kind of like trying to find somebody to be, to talk about things we don't talk about. Grief is one of them. I would love to interview a family or a person who is choosing medical aid in dying when they're facing a terminal illness, and they're going to choose when they die. And it's really difficult to people to get anybody to want to be that poster child for that particular topic. But grief is something that's so important, because we all have it, and we don't come to this life equipped, like you have said today. We don't come knowing what to do with it, so we push against it. Plus, it hurts like hell, and we push against anything that hurts like hell. And I tell people all the time, it's in that againstness that we suffer. It's when we're pushing against it that we suffer. If we can sit next to it, if we can invite it in, if we can put our arms around it, we don't suffer the same way. There's a suffering, but it's not the acute suffering of being in againstness to something. So if you have anything else you want to share with us today, please, I will shut up. You can talk.
No. I've learned so much from you just having this conversation. And the thing that everyone in my family has learned is, and I thought I was a lot more evolved than I was around grief, and evidently not. So that's always humbling. But one of the things that has really helped us, ironically, is humor. So we try to laugh at the absurd and the joy in life. I mean, my husband and I really make a point because we have are very careful and aware in our own marriage, which is exceptionally strong, that we can't take that for granted. And you can't take anything for granted anymore. And that is a big lesson. So, and it's not the lesson, I certainly didn't want it this way, but I got it. So there you go. But that is okay to have these moments of joy and laughter. And, I'll give you an example. People must have thought we were insane. So, out of the blue, my husband in December said, let's go back to London. That was our last family trip with Bailey. And let's go back to London and spread some of her ashes because she loved London, wanted to work in the theater there. We had a blast going to the Cabaret, Kit Kat Club, and we went to just tons of theater. We had such a great trip. And so we went to the Kit Kat Club, and I was like, I had a little bit of Bailey to put. She made friends. It was really fun. Then she went out the next Friday with the cast. It was really great. And so I took her. My husband took her out, put a little bit around a knothole in a plane tree, which you're trying to be discreet because but we knew this is what Bailey wanted. And of course the wind kicked up and it was one of those. And we just were laughing so hard because we figured that was Bailey all the way. It was total prankster. And so, I mean, it sounds macabre. It's gallows humor, but it's what pushes you through. One of the things that pushes you through. There's so many things, and I'm still learning them. But just that embrace of just ridiculousness, like here we are now, outside of the Kit Kat Club in Soho, London, flying around, and then but but here's this crazy thing is I got a text from one of Bailey's friends who went to the theater, and she said, Bailey was so much there. She, because of Bailey, went to see the show, got these, how they have the cheap tickets, and she stood in line and went to see the show, and she's like, it was crazy how much I sensed Bailey there. And I was like, you didn't know this, but we actually, and so, I mean, it's all those things that happen, but you do have to remember to seize the opportunity at laughter and joy wherever it comes in, even if for me, it's like staring at my seeds to see if they've come in yet. So, I mean, so that's okay. It doesn't mean you're not mourning. And I think there is this stereotype because people come up to me, and I'm writing I wrote that whole piece on, what to do. And I have a second part that I'm still working on. People come up to you with the long faces, and when you try to, it's the long faces and people don't say anything, and you just want the earth to swallow you up. And
you want the earth to swallow them up.
Yeah, well, okay, there's that too, but you're sort of awkwardly standing there, and you just want to have someone say something that is, and I think I gave you an example, or gave an example in a blog post, like some of this great guy, this local guy in Woody Creek, who just came up to me and said, I really liked Bailey, and I don't really like that many people. And it's like, we were at a dinner party, and he's like, do you want a beer? I need a beer. And he wandered off, and we were just laughing hysterically because it was just the right thing. Like, and it was real. And it's true. He doesn't like that many people. But so that's my advice, is that it is okay to let joy and laughter slip in and to show it and to feel it, because the grief is a constant. It's not, so you might as well, um, link arms with the both of them.
One of the things that slipped in for me when you were talking about you and Daniel and bringing humor into your lives and knowing how important that is to get us through, push us through those moments. I wanted to ask you about rage and, what that showed up like in your lives, because I can't imagine being assaulted with a robbery like the one that you guys experienced without also wanting to just break things, and that and how you have managed to shift that energy as well. But I don't want to go into a long thing about it now, but the gamut of emotions is so big, and there is no checklist. That whole idea of Kubler-Ross, and well, I've had that and that and that. Now all I have to do is experience this and I'll be done. Anyway, I do that idea of what that might have shown up like in your lives. And maybe each one of you, it's been different. And even for Fiona, because now she's an only child and all the focus is on her. And maybe she's mad. Maybe she's had some moments of being.
She was furious. And I can't speak to her, but she did say, I'm obviously going through cancer and I have a rare kind of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I will be okay, but it's a journey. And she said, really? Bailey did? And she was just so angry that Bailey took that when we well knew the risks. And, but my anger was maybe a little bit more oblique, because when you learn about how dispensable these the drug cartels think humanity is. But I also had odd rage at it was one weekend that both Fiona and Daniel were away, and I just collapsed into rage. It was the kind of rage that people like from years ago that had nothing to do with, it was a cumulative rage of just going through people who just behaved poorly in my life, and from relatives, and I really spun out. And then it was 2 days and I was burned out, and it burned off like
a rocket ship.
Exactly, like most tempests. So it wasn't this, crusading rage or whatever. It was a lot more illogical. And yeah, I know Kubler-Ross has been revised, and that was taken out of context, that advice. And I get it. People want a map. They want to go, okay, bing, and then I feel this, and then they know what to expect. But for me, it was a rage against things and circumstances that had happened that had nothing to do with Bailey. And that was a huge surprise. And it's like grief too, it's cumulative. So you experience grief and then you're mourning for others that you've lost. And it's this wild dynamic. But the rage, that bit of rage sort of at, all of these injustices that happened in my life, that was a surprise, definitely. But it happened. And then it was gone. And what happened is, again, shift, it's like getting realigned at the chiropractor's office or something. Like, it was gone. And I had a different, and I know that sounds, speaking of tidiness, too tidy, like all of a sudden you're changed, but truly that did happen.
I believe it. I know that it does. I know that happens. And it's part of, down the road, maybe one of the things that you can be grateful to this experience for. that's kind of a stretch, and I will say things sometimes to people too soon in their path. Um, but being able to look back and say that was a good thing that happened in my life. That those 2 days of raging, then releasing that rage, liberated me from things I'd been carrying for years that I hadn't really even realized I was carrying. And it freed me from that. So it's, finding those things that you can be grateful to out of an experience that was so tragic and dark and horrific. You would never not take her back in exchange for those moments, but you have to find those footholds.
And that, I mean, I love that word liberated, because again, back to cultural programming, I guess I carried a lot inside that I didn't deal with, I hadn't dealt with. So I needed to, open up that valve, and boom. Um, so, and there was a great sense of peace after that. But so anyway, that was my, if I have any rage updates, I will let you know. But
Great.
right now, I'm pretty sanguine. So
I I hope that you and Daniel have a fabulous trip, and that Fiona is full of stories and wonder, and the three of you being together again is going to be great. And I hope I see you again when you return. I'll watch for your posts on Substack to follow. Yeah.
well, thank you. I really appreciate your championing me and shining light and helping people, because we all need help. And so it's been an honor. Thank you. And we will talk soon.
I hope so. Thank you.